Most men are running their entire lives on autopilot. No system, no structure, no real plan. In the next few minutes, you're going to see exactly how to fix your finances, your body, your mind, your relationships, your environment, and your time. All of it, rebuilt from the ground up. This is the blueprint nobody handed you. Let's start with something uncomfortable. If you looked at the average adult man's bank account, his apartment, his daily routine, and his browser history from last Tuesday at 2 in the morning, you'd think this person was actively trying to sabotage himself. And here's what's brutal about that. He probably is. Not on purpose, not consciously, but through sheer neglect, through years of telling himself he'll figure it out later, he's built a life that runs on chaos disguised as freedom. He calls it going with the flow. What it actually is? Drowning in slow motion with a smile on his face. Here's the thing about organizing your life as a man in 2026. It's not about color-coded calendars and motivational quotes on your bathroom mirror. It's about building a machine, a system so clean, so efficient that discipline becomes almost unnecessary because the architecture of your day does the heavy lifting for you. The guys who look like they have superhuman willpower? Most of them just set up their environment so that the lazy option and the productive option are the same thing. That's not discipline, that's engineering. And that's exactly what we're going to build today. Let's start where it hurts the most: money. Because nothing will disorganize your entire life faster than financial chaos. When you don't know where your money goes, you don't just lose dollars, you lose sleep. You lose confidence. You lose the ability to make clear decisions about everything else, because there's always this low-level static in the background, this constant hum of anxiety, whispering that you're one bad month away from disaster. And for a lot of men, that whisper is accurate. Studies show that financial stress is the #1 cause of anxiety in adult men, beating out work pressure, relationships, and health combined. It's not even close. Here's what most guys do with money. They earn it, they spend it, they check their balance once every few days and hope the number isn't too scary, and they repeat. That's not a financial system. That's gambling with extra steps. The first thing an organized man does is know his numbers, not roughly, not a ballpark. His exact monthly income after taxes, his exact fixed expenses, and his exact discretionary spending for the last 90 days. Most men have never done this exercise. They've been earning money for 10, 15, 20 years, and they still couldn't tell you within $500 what they spend in a typical month. That's like driving cross-country without ever looking at your fuel gauge. Sure, you might make it, but eventually you're going to be standing on the shoulder of a highway wondering what went wrong. The fix is almost stupidly simple. Every dollar that comes in gets assigned a job before you touch it. Housing, food, transportation, savings, investments, fun money. Every single dollar gets a destination. And the key part, the part that separates organized men from everyone else, is that the money moves automatically. Your paycheck hits, and within 24 hours, predetermined amounts flow into separate accounts without you lifting a finger. Your savings account gets funded before you even see the money. Your investment contributions happen on the same day every month, like clockwork. Your bills get paid automatically. By the time you actually look at what's left in your checking account, that number is your real spending money. Not a guess, not a hope, a fact. That's the difference between financial organization and financial wishful thinking. But here's where it gets clever. The guys who really master this add one more layer. They build what financial planners call a buffer account. 1 month's worth of expenses sitting untouched in checking, always. That buffer means you're never operating on the edge. You're never sweating a payment timing issue. You're never playing the game of which bill to pay first because the paycheck hasn't cleared yet. That buffer turns your entire financial life from a tightrope walk into a stroll down a sidewalk. The peace of mind alone is worth every penny you had to sacrifice to build it. One man described it as the first time in his adult life he felt like he was breathing financially, not gasping, breathing. And the beautiful part? Once the automation is running, you barely think about money at all. Not because you're ignoring it, but because the system handles it. Your brain is free to focus on things that actually require your attention. That's what financial organization really looks like. Not obsessing over every transaction. Building a machine that makes obsession unnecessary. But money alone won't save you if your body is falling apart. And this is where most men get it catastrophically wrong, because they treat their body like it's separate from everything else. Like health is this isolated category you can ignore while you optimize the rest. It's not. Your body is the vehicle for everything. Every meeting you attend, every relationship you build, every creative idea you have, every problem you solve. It all runs through a body that's either helping you or holding you back. There's no neutral. Your body is either an asset or a liability. And right now, if you're honest with yourself, which side is it on? Here's the thing about physical organization. It doesn't mean you need to become a gym rat or count every macro until food stops being enjoyable. It means building a non-negotiable baseline that keeps the machine running. For most men, that baseline is surprisingly modest. Move your body with real intensity at least 3 times a week for 45 minutes. Sleep 7 to 8 hours in a dark, cool room. Drink enough water that your urine is pale yellow by midday. Eat protein with every single meal. That's it. That's the foundation. Sounds simple, right? But simplicity is deceiving because simple doesn't mean easy when your entire environment is designed to keep you sedentary, sleep-deprived, dehydrated, and overfed on garbage. The organized man doesn't rely on motivation to work out. He removes the decision. His gym bag is packed the night before. His workout schedule is the same days every week. His gym clothes are the first thing he sees when he opens his closet. He doesn't ask himself whether he feels like training today, because the question has already been answered by the system he set up last month. One guy put it perfectly. He said he stopped treating the gym like a decision and started treating it like a commute. You don't decide whether to drive to work. You just do it because that's what happens on Tuesday morning. That shift, from decision to default, is worth more than any supplement or workout program on the planet. If you're tired of negotiating with yourself and ready to turn discipline into your default, the K.M.A method was built for that. In just 5 minutes a day, you install the system so action stops being a question and starts being automatic. The link is in the pinned comment. And then there's nutrition, which most guys overcomplicate into oblivion. They bounce between extreme diets, obsess over the latest superfood, or just eat whatever is convenient and tell themselves they'll start eating clean next Monday. The organized man doesn't do any of that. He builds a rotation of 7 to 10 meals he genuinely enjoys that also happen to be reasonably healthy, and he cycles through them. Boring? Maybe. Effective? Absolutely. Because the enemy of good nutrition isn't lack of knowledge. Every man alive knows that vegetables are better than chips. The enemy is decision fatigue at 6:30 in the evening when you're tired and hungry and the delivery app is right there on your home screen. A pre-decided meal rotation eliminates that moment entirely. The decision was made on Sunday. Today, you're just executing. Meal prep doesn't need to be 5 hours of cooking on a weekend. Even just deciding what you're eating each day and making sure the ingredients are in the fridge is enough to eliminate 90% of bad food decisions. And while we're talking about the body, let's talk about the thing nobody wants to mention: sleep. The most disrespected, most undervalued, most brutally effective performance enhancer available to any human being. And it's completely free. Every guy wants to talk about cold plunges and nootropics and optimization hacks, but most of them are getting 5.5 hours of broken sleep on a mattress they bought in college. The research on this is almost frightening. After just one night of sleeping less than 6 hours, your testosterone drops by the equivalent of aging 10 to 15 years. Your decision-making degrades to the level of someone who's legally intoxicated. Your body's ability to regulate insulin gets compromised, which means every meal you eat gets stored more efficiently as fat. One night, That's all it takes. Multiply that by 365, and you start to understand why so many men feel like they're aging faster than they should. An organized man treats sleep like the highest return investment in his portfolio. He has a hard shutdown time for screens. He keeps his bedroom cold, somewhere around 65 to 68 degrees. He doesn't eat heavy meals within 3 hours of bed. And here's the weird part that nobody talks about. He has a boring nighttime routine. Not exciting, not stimulating, aggressively, intentionally boring. Because the brain needs a runway to land on, and if you're scrolling through short-form videos until the second your head hits the pillow, you're essentially trying to land a 747 on a parking lot. Good luck with that. Now let's talk about something that connects everything else, but rarely gets its own conversation. Your environment. The physical space you live in. Because here's a truth that will sound dramatic until you test it yourself. You cannot have an organized mind in a disorganized space. Your apartment, your room, your desk, your car. These are not just places where you exist. They are mirrors of your internal state, and more importantly, they are inputs that shape your internal state. Walk into a messy room, and your brain immediately starts processing all of that visual noise. Every pile of clothes, every stack of papers, every unwashed dish is an open loop in your mind. Your brain is tracking all of it, even when you think you're ignoring it. And those open loops consume cognitive resources that you could be using for literally anything else. The organized man's space follows one principle. Everything has a home, and everything lives in its home when it's not being used. That's it. Not minimalism for the sake of aesthetics. Not some monk-like existence where you own 12 items and sit on the floor. Just a simple rule. If something doesn't have a designated place, it either gets one or it gets removed. Experienced guys who've mastered this talk about a strange phenomenon. They say that cleaning and organizing their physical space created a clarity of thought that no meditation app or journaling practice ever could. Because when your environment is handled, when there are no open loops pulling at your attention, your mind is suddenly free to do what it's actually good at. Thinking, creating, solving, planning. The space isn't just where you think, it's part of how you think. There's a practical layer to this that most people skip. The evening reset. Every night, before bed, the organized man spends 10 minutes putting his space back to zero. Dishes done, counters cleared, clothes put away, bag packed for tomorrow. It takes 10 minutes, sometimes less, but the effect on the next morning is almost unfair. You wake up to a clean environment, which means your first cognitive experience of the day is order, not chaos. You're not starting the day by navigating through yesterday's mess. You're starting it with a clean slate. Military veterans talk about this exact principle. Making your bed first thing in the morning isn't about the bed. It's about starting the day with a completed task, a small win that sets the tone for everything that follows. The evening reset is the advanced version of that same idea. You're not just setting up tomorrow morning, you're setting up tomorrow's mindset. But that brings us to a bigger question. What exactly are you thinking about? Because an organized space means nothing if the mind operating inside it is running 147 different priorities at once with no clear hierarchy. And this is perhaps the most overlooked piece of organizing your life as a man. The mental architecture. Knowing what matters. Knowing what doesn't. And having the clarity to tell the difference every single day without hesitation. Here's the thing about most men's priorities. They don't actually have any. They have vague intentions. They have a general sense that they should be doing better. They have a mental list of things that feel important, but that list shifts based on whatever crisis is loudest on any given Tuesday. That's not prioritization. That's just reacting to life with slightly more guilt than the average person. An organized man sits down once a quarter and asks himself a brutally honest question. If I could only accomplish 3 things in the next 90 days, 3 things that would genuinely move my life forward, what would they be? Not 20 things. Not 10. 3. Because here's what military strategists figured out centuries ago, and what most civilians still haven't learned. A plan with 20 priorities is a plan with no priorities. When everything is important, nothing is. The power isn't in identifying what matters. The power is in having the courage to decide what doesn't matter, at least not right now, and letting it go without guilt. That's organizational maturity. And most men never reach it because it requires saying no to good things in order to say yes to the right things. Those 3 priorities then get broken into monthly targets, weekly objectives, and daily tasks. Not complicated, just specific. The difference between a wish and a plan is a deadline and a next action. Every single priority needs both. Your goal isn't to think about things. Your goal is to execute so cleanly that thinking becomes almost unnecessary, because the system tells you exactly what to do next. One man described it this way. He said that before he built his system, every morning felt like standing in front of an open refrigerator, hoping something would inspire him to eat. After the system, every morning felt like sitting down to a meal that was already prepared. Same man, same capabilities, completely different output. The only variable was structure. And there's one more layer here that changes everything. The brain dump. Once a week, the organized man takes every single thought, worry, idea, half-formed plan, and nagging feeling and writes it all down. Every single one. Not organized, not filtered, just dumped onto a page like emptying a backpack full of rocks. Then, and only then, he sorts through the pile. Some items become tasks, some become projects, some get deleted because they were never real priorities, just anxieties dressed up as action items. The point of the brain dump is that your mind was never designed to store things. It was designed to process things. When you try to use it as a storage device, it panics. It keeps pinging you with reminders at 3 in the morning. It generates a constant, low-grade stress that feels like you're forgetting something important, because you probably are. The brain dump takes all of that off the table and puts it where it belongs. On paper, in a system, where it can be evaluated rationally instead of bouncing around your skull creating chaos. Now, here's where things get interesting. Because you can have perfect finances, a strong body, a clean space, and clear priorities, and still have your life feel completely disorganized if your relationships are a mess. And this is the area where men are the most resistant to the idea of organization, because relationships feel like they should be spontaneous, organic, natural. Organizing your relationships sounds almost clinical, almost cold. But think about what disorganized relationships actually look like. Forgetting important dates, not calling people back, letting months pass without reaching out to close friends, having the same unresolved argument with your partner every 6 weeks because nobody ever actually addressed the root cause. That's not spontaneity, that's neglect with better marketing. The organized man treats his relationships like any other critical system in his life. He has a small circle of people who genuinely matter, and he invests in those connections with the same intentionality he brings to his finances or his fitness. That means regular, scheduled contact. Not because it's forced, but because without the schedule, life has a way of swallowing weeks and months whole. A quick message every week to his closest friends, a real phone call once a month to family members who matter. A weekly, dedicated block of time with his partner where phones don't exist and conversation has actual depth. Sounds rigid, right? But the guys who do this consistently report something counterintuitive. They say the scheduled connection actually feels more genuine than the spontaneous kind, because the spontaneous kind kept not happening. An intention without a system is just a hope, and hope is a terrible relationship strategy. There's another dimension to this that most men avoid entirely, and it's worth talking about: the relationship audit. Once or twice a year, the organized man takes an honest look at who's in his life and asks a hard question. Is this relationship adding energy or draining it? Not every person in your life deserves an unlimited pass. Some friendships ran their course 5 years ago, but keep limping along out of habit and guilt. Some relationships are actively toxic, but persist because ending them feels harder than enduring them. The organized man isn't cold about this. He's honest. He understands that his time and emotional energy are finite resources, and investing them in relationships that consistently take more than they give is the same as pouring money into a bad investment because you've already lost so much you feel like you can't walk away. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. And speaking of things that feel counterintuitive, let's talk about how you manage your time, because this is where the entire framework either comes together or falls apart. You can have everything else dialed in, but if your relationship with time is broken, none of it compounds the way it should. And most men have a deeply broken relationship with time. They simultaneously believe they don't have enough of it and waste staggering amounts of it every single day. The average man spends over 4 hours daily on his phone, most of it doing absolutely nothing that moves his life forward. 4 hours. That's 28 hours a week. That's roughly 1,500 hours a year. You could learn a new language in that time. You could build a business. You could write 3 books. You could completely transform your body. Instead, most guys know exactly what happened on social media last Thursday, but couldn't tell you what their 3 priorities for the quarter are. Here's the fix, and it's going to sound almost too basic. Every Sunday evening, you sit down for 30 minutes and plan your week. That's it, 30 minutes. You look at your 3 quarterly priorities. You identify the specific actions that need to happen this week to move them forward. You block those actions into your calendar first, before anything else gets scheduled. Those blocks are non-negotiable. They don't get bumped for meetings that could be emails. They don't get sacrificed because someone else's emergency felt urgent. They go in first because they represent the things that actually matter to your life, not just the things that happen to be loud at the moment. Then, every morning, you spend 5 minutes reviewing the day. Not planning it. It's already planned. Just reviewing. Confirming that the structure is in place and mentally committing to the sequence. Veterans of high-performance routines say that this 5-minute morning review is the single highest leverage habit they've ever adopted. Not journaling, not meditation, not cold showers. 5 minutes of looking at what's already been decided and saying, yes, that's what today looks like. Because the magic isn't in the planning. The magic is in the elimination of decision fatigue before the day even begins. And here's a concept that separates the truly organized from the men who are just busy pretending to be productive. Time theming. Instead of scattering different types of work across every day like confetti, the organized man assigns themes to blocks of his week. Deep, creative work happens on specific mornings. Administrative tasks get batched into one afternoon. Meetings cluster together instead of being sprinkled throughout the day like landmines. The reason this works is neurological. Every time you switch between different types of tasks, your brain pays a cognitive switching cost. It takes roughly 23 minutes to fully regain focus after an interruption. So, if you're bouncing between creative work and email and phone calls and administrative tasks all day, you're never actually reaching full cognitive depth on anything. You're spending the entire day in the shallow end of your own brain. Time theming fixes that. It gives your mind permission to go deep because it knows it won't be yanked out of that depth for the next 2 or 3 hours. Pretty clever, right? But here's the part that separates the men who actually sustain this from the ones who try it for 2 weeks and quietly go back to chaos. The maintenance. Every system degrades without maintenance. Your financial automation needs a monthly check. Your fitness routine needs a quarterly adjustment. Your environment needs a weekly reset. Your relationships need a regular audit to make sure you're investing in the right people. Your priorities need to be challenged every 90 days. None of this is set it and forget it. It's set it and maintain it. And the organized man doesn't see maintenance as boring overhead. He sees it as the thing that keeps the entire machine from slowly grinding to a halt. Because it will grind to a halt. That's what systems do when they're ignored. They decay. They rust. They break down in slow, invisible ways that you don't notice until something critical fails. One thing that experienced men mention again and again is the concept of the weekly review. Every Sunday, before you plan the next week, you spend 15 minutes reviewing the current one. What worked? What didn't? Where did the system break down? Where did you override your own structure because something felt more urgent in the moment? This isn't self-punishment. This isn't an exercise in guilt. It's calibration. It's the same thing an engineer does when checking instruments. Not looking for what's wrong, just making sure everything is still accurate. And over time, these small weekly calibrations compound into something remarkable. The system gets tighter. The waste gets smaller. The gap between what you intend and what you actually do shrinks until it's almost invisible. That's not perfection. That's just the natural result of paying attention on a consistent schedule. The K.M.A. method gives you the structure to tighten your system in just 5 minutes a day, so intention and action finally align. Don't wait for another wasted month to realize you needed it. The link is in the pinned comment. And that brings us to the final piece, the one that ties everything together and gives the whole structure its meaning. Purpose. Because you can organize every single element of your life with surgical precision and still feel hollow if the entire machine isn't aimed at something that matters to you. Not to society, not to your parents, not to the version of success that gets the most likes. To you. The organized man knows why he's organizing. He's not building structure for its own sake. He's building it because structure creates freedom. And freedom is only valuable when you know what you want to use it for. The samurai had a concept for this. They believed that a warrior who had already accepted death was free to live fully because fear no longer dictated his choices. The modern equivalent isn't about death. It's about acceptance of the truth that your time is limited, genuinely limited, and that every unorganized day is a day you chose to waste that finite resource on things that don't matter. Not because you're lazy, not because you're broken, but because nobody ever handed you the blueprint and said, "Here, this is how it works." This is how an adult man takes the raw material of his days and builds something that actually resembles the life he's capable of living. The men who build these systems don't become robots. They don't lose their spontaneity or their edge or their ability to enjoy a random Tuesday afternoon doing absolutely nothing. In fact, the opposite happens. They enjoy those moments more because they're chosen, not defaulted to. The lazy afternoon is intentional, not accidental. The night out with friends happens because it was prioritized, not because it was the only thing available to distract from the chaos. Everything shifts from reactive to deliberate. And that shift, that single transition from a man who lets life happen to him to a man who designs the life that happens, that's not just organization, that's evolution. So here's the real question, and it's not complicated, it's just uncomfortable. A year from now, if nothing changes, if you keep the same non-system, the same vague intentions, the same hope-based approach to your finances, your body, your time, your relationships, and your space, where will you be? Be honest. Because the answer to that question is the only motivation you actually need. The blueprint is here. The structure exists. The only variable left is whether you decide that today is the day you stop running your life like a man who's hoping things work out and start running it like a man who's making sure they do.